Hey guys, welcome back to the BMW blog channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming new BMW M5 and its highly anticipated new variant, the M5 Touring. Stay tuned as we will be diving into the bold design changes and features that this new BMW M5 G90 generation, as well as of course the G99, which will be the Touring version, will bring to contrast with the recently presented new 5 Series. Before jumping into the new M5's design, let's take a quick look at the current 5 Series new design. As we know, BMW introduced us to the recent 5 Series 8th generation back in May, bringing a complete redesign in terms of visual changes, electrified options, and an array of cutting-edge features. This right here is the i5 M60, which is, of course, the first ever fully electric BMW 5 Series in its top-of-the-line M spec, boasting up to 590 horsepower. That is, for reference, 40 horsepower more than the M4 CSL. Some of the key visual highlights of this new generation's front fascia include this larger kidney grille, available with vertical slats or horizontal slats, whether it's the M spec or the traditional one. And of course the iconic glow, which is this thin LED strip that curves around the grille's frame to give this car, of course, more presence and more personality when you're driving around at night, and they want it to be instantly recognizable as a BMW, as well as these sharp creases on the hood to emphasize, of course, the kidney grills. Aside from this, the headlights have also been redesigned, now including the double arrowed LEDs that we've seen on other recent models, although this time they're leaning forward to mimic that impression given by the classic shark nose design from the 70s golden era of BMW design. The headlight housing also features a familiar shape reminiscent to a very iconic generation of the 5 Series, the E60. I really like this new front design with its geometric sharp edges, the traditional V-shaped design in this lower front bumper, as well as the reasonably sized grille. However, I would still adapt this lower notch on the headlights, which is something characteristic of some recent models such as the new X2 and the latest 2 Series in its Grand Coupe form. Moreover, I would have made this black plastic much sleeker, as its visual purpose really is to make the shadow from the intake appear much larger and deeper. And it might not look as good when the light is hitting directly from certain angles, you know. Another way in which this design may have taken inspiration from the iconic E60 5 Series generation is in its side view. As we can contrast here with the previous generation 5 Series, this new generation sports a much more simplified design, evoking the brand's new monolithic design language through this clean surface and sharp continuous shoulder line, which goes from the headlight right until the taillight. One controversial design feature of the new 5 Series generation is the new iteration of the Hofmeister King, which is this acute angled C-pillar. Now extending past the door frame, the new King features the model's number to give its unique distinction against its sedan siblings. Looking at the rear, we can see that BMW have given this new 5 Series a rather conservative design. The taillights, for example, have kept the traditional L-shaped design identity. The number plate is still in the boot lid, for example, which is a change that BMW made to the recent 7 Series, moving it down into the lower bumper. The bumper as well doesn't show too many aggressive cues aside from the contrasting graphics in black. And now it is time to see the long-awaited new BMW M5. These right here are the official images that BMW published as part of their Christmas teaser campaign for their new M5 in its touring variant. This car will be a really special launch for BMW, as it will mean the rebirth of a legend. The last time that BMW introduced the world to a touring version of the M5 model was back in 2005, with the E60 iconic generation and its glorious V10 engine. That model would inevitably be replaced by the X5M of that year, as the SUV fever would start to grow in 2009 and continue to do well in sales numbers until nowadays. This will also be a very special launch for the M division as well, as it will be brought into the US market. Yet there's still no news on whether BMW will change their mind and also bring the M3 Touring that we've seen in the European market. Either way, we should expect the sedan version of the M5 to be unveiled by late spring, entering its production in July. And on the other hand, the M5 Touring should be unveiled shortly after, with the production slated for the month of November. Now, if we take a closer look into the prototype in these images, we can immediately identify several visual changes over the conventional 5 Series. Starting with the front end, the bumper has now been redesigned to let through much more airflow through this massive trapezoidal intake, as well as through these lateral triangular ones. As we saw on the latest X2 model with the M package, the lower intake is now bisected by the vertical air splitter, which visually adds a lot of character by reiterating the duality element drawn between the kidney grille as well as the hood creases. Notice how recent M models are now adopting this trapezoidal shape design into the front bumper to contrast with the typical V shape that most conventional BMWs have had for years now. Also, take a look at these sharp creases, which, aside from having the rather similar style to those on the latest M3 and M4 models, add a much more menacing look to the new generation of the M5. The grille isn't expected to change much visually compared to the one we saw on the recent i5 M60, still featuring these horizontal slats and the rectangular radar cutout in the center, albeit now featuring obviously much larger openings to let the engine breathe. Another nice detail here on the new front design is the new shelf housing the headlights, which is something we also saw on the latest M2 and which adds a lot more character to the M version compared to the conventional model. Moving on to the lateral view, we can clearly see how the light reflects off the new bulging fenders, which not only add more menacing looks to it, but also bring a greater sense of stance compared to the conventional model. This section around the wheel arch is usually a clear indicator that we are upon an M model, as it protrudes greatly against the door cutout, same as we can see here on the recent 3 Series compared to the M3 model. One detail that has surprised me with this new M5 generation is the absence of the lateral air intake, which is something that has been featured in most of the M5 generations and even with other models from the BMW lineup, like the recent M3, M4, M8 and so forth. However, bear in mind that the latest M2 generation also went for a cleaner design, lacking that M intake that its predecessor had. It's still not clear if BMW will end up adding some kind of graphic or trim piece in this section, but what we do know is that the car will reserve this space on the left side for the hybrid charging port. The reason for this is that the new M5 will be produced with a plug-in hybrid powertrain, featuring the monstrous V8 that we saw on the new XM SUV. Known as the S68 engine, this 4.4-liter V8 will be combined with an electric motor to deliver over 700 horsepower and a ludicrous torque figure close to 1000 Newton meters. This right here is how the Touring version should look like when it gets presented later this year, in a spectacular Isle of Man green paint with the M parts in contrasting black. And this right here is how the regular sedan version of the M5 should look like. Now let's take a look at the rear view of this gorgeous wagon. Here are a few teasers that BMW has published of it. As we can see, the Touring version will feature a massive roof spoiler with a subtle division in the middle, again reiterating that element of duality starting from the front bumper across the hood until reaching the rear end. From this view, we can also see the classic M-specific side mirror in all of its glory. Now, BMW haven't really published any high-res pictures showing the rear bumper in detail. So let's take away these Christmas wrappings and get a closer look at the actual beast underneath it. From this view, we can see some really nice details exclusive to this M variant, such as the roof spoiler that we mentioned previously, the flared fenders on the front and the rear, of course, or even this new split design rear diffuser. This view also reveals several noteworthy details. For instance, the taillights have now been refreshed with an upward extension of the L-shaped LED signature, although this feature won't be exclusive to the M5, but rather to the touring variant of the 5 Series and M5. Here we can compare them with those found on the sedan version. I personally feel like these new taillights on the touring version look way more elegant than on the sedan version and way more traditional BMW style, if you get what I mean. Additionally, the light reflectors have been positioned vertically, typical of M models, in this upward angled surface with the sharper edges. Oh, and here's the charging port that we discussed earlier, in case you haven't spotted it yet. And at last but not least, let's take a quick look at the interior of the new M5. This right here is the refreshed interior design we saw with the unveiling of the new generation 5 Series, with its new M Sport steering wheel, the new BMW curve display with iDrive 8.5, as well as the futuristic looking interactive bar that wraps around the dashboard and the doors, illuminating the ambient according to the different selected driving modes. Now, we haven't seen any images or teasers of how the interior of the new M5 will look, but our guess is that it will keep the same steering wheel as on the M Sport package of the current 5 Series, although now with, of course, the M mode buttons in red and the larger gear shift paddles too. Furthermore, it will adopt a new graphic interface on the digital cockpit with the typical M-style graphics in red and blue design. It will also incorporate a dedicated M-specific gear lever as well as much sportier seats, with the option, of course, for bucket seats too. Alright, so this was our detailed look at the upcoming BMW M5 and M5 Touring. Let us know what you think in comments about the 700 horsepower hybrid beast. And most importantly, which one would you go for, the M5 Sedan or the M5 Touring? As always, stay tuned for the latest news on upcoming BMW models, and thank you very much for watching.